I was literally working, sitting in the middle of Bill Clinton's political machine. It was where he made payoffs, where he repaid favors to people for campaign support. I was in an interesting seat, and I knew it. So I started gathering the documents. After everybody left, I would stick around as if I were working on the annual report. That would give me access to all the documents, and I made copies of them all. For about 2 months, I watched accounts accumulate money. At the end of the month, they zero balanced. They're laundering drug money. There were $100 million a month in cocaine coming in and out of Mena, Arkansas. They had a problem. They were doing so much money in cocaine, $100 million. You create a problem in a little state like Arkansas. How do you clean $100 million a month? ADFA until 1989 never banked in Arkansas. What they would do is they would ship the money down to Florida, a bank in Florida, which later would be connected to BCCI. They would ship money to a bank in Atlanta, Georgia, which, by the way, was later connected to BCCI. They'd ship to Citicorp in New York, which would send the money overseas. And there was an interesting one, a bank in Chicago. That bank, by the way, is partially owned by Dan Rostenkowski. Dan Lassiter would get the bonds. He would become the broker for the bonds. He would transfer money back to ADFA. He never sold a bond. The money then would leave ADFA, go into one of the various banks for the specific bond loan, and they would zero it out. When they zeroed it out, they were giving it back to Lester, less their handling fees. Your president, the president of the United States, not only was a part of a system that was laundering millions of cocaine dollars, your president signed off on it. He can't deny that he did. You see, because ADFA, there's one little catch. Every loan that ADFA made, Bill Clinton himself had to sign off on it.
And finally, as testament to Clinton's deep political connections into the political insiders and the behind-the-scenes political groups that really run the show, people might be able to cast their mind back to episode 58 of this podcast, Meet Carroll Quigley, where we talked about Carroll Quigley and the round table that he exposed, and Bill Clinton's interesting name drop of Professor Quigley during his acceptance speech for the Democratic Party presidential nomination back in '92.
As a teenager, I heard John Kennedy's summons to citizenship. And then, as a student at Georgetown, I heard that call clarified by a professor named Carroll Quigley, who said to us that America was the greatest nation in history because our people had always believed in two things: that tomorrow can be better than today, and that every one of us has a personal moral responsibility to make it so.
Now, that tip of the hat of President Clinton, or soon-to-be President Clinton, to his old Georgetown professor, Carroll Quigley, is interesting for a number of reasons. And you can go back to episode 58 for more on Carroll Quigley and his books exposing tragedy and hope and the Anglo-American establishment, etc., exposing the round table group that was set up by Cecil Rhodes, and which set up basically branches in various other countries, including the Council on Foreign Relations in the United States, and how these branches work together to subsume national sovereignty and create a system of financial control whose far-reaching aims was basically to subsume national sovereignty and power in the hands of an international financial elite who would control things behind the scenes through an interlocking series of central banks directed by the BIS, the Bank for International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, the central bank of the central banks, which would control it all from behind the scenes. And that's, surprise, surprise, lo and behold, exactly the type of system that we have been engineered into, and which we've been talking about for years, and is now more and more coming into the open as, for example, the Eurozone crisis starts to create the need for a European central bank able to act in each individual European country and subsume that national sovereignty, etc., etc., exactly as we've been talking about for years, exactly as has been exposed for, at the very least, 3/4 of a century when you go back to people like Carroll Quigley. So this is nothing new for anyone who's been paying attention, but very interesting, that entire story. So again, more on that in episode 58. But what about Bill Clinton and his specific associations with this group? Was it just mere happenstance that he ended up under Carroll Quigley and name-dropping him at the DNC, etc., etc.? Or is there more to Bill Clinton and his association with this Rhodes Round Table? Well, as I'm sure many of you would be aware, Bill Clinton himself was a Rhodes Scholar, and that he did travel to Oxford during his university days to go study there as part of the Rhodes Scholarship, and he has his own very personal connections to that group, and in fact, the connections might run even deeper than is commonly known. So let's turn to a very fascinating article written by Andrew D. Basaggio. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. It's been reproduced on a website called theforbiddenknowledge.com, so of course I'll put the link in the show notes, along with the links to all of the documents and clips from today's episode, so please go to corbettreport.com for that. But let's take a listen to this very interesting article called "Is Bill Clinton a Descendant of Cecil Rhodes?" Quote, "President Bill Clinton's official biography states that he is a Blythe. We have all heard the tear-jerking story of how he was born Bill Blythe, how his father died 3 months before he was born when he drowned after his car careened into an irrigation ditch, how he was adopted by a man named Clinton, whose name he took. It is a familiar scene from the black and white movie that is Clinton's past." Despite this storyline, however, questions have lingered about the true facts of the president's ancestry since he first stepped onto the national stage in 1992. This debate has been fueled in part by the president's political enemies, masters of the low blow. But it has also been reignited time and again by the Clinton team itself. They have always acted as if they were hiding something about Clinton's heritage. Remember how following his election, Clinton went in search of his Blythe cousins? Generally, when one has just been elected president of the United States, it is deemed unnecessary to go in search of one's long-lost cousins. Traditionally, they are expected to come to you. Then we have the inaugural of William Jefferson Clinton in 1992. The President and First Lady scheduled, and then abruptly cancelled, a sojourn to Monticello that was to immediately follow his inaugural address. Was this done to disguise the fact that the 42nd President was a direct descendant of the 3rd President, the Sage of Monticello, Thomas Jefferson? At least one longtime friend of the president has made public statements that would tend to support the premise that Bill Clinton is, in fact, related to Thomas Jefferson. William McDonough, today the Dean of Architecture at the University of Virginia, the university that Jefferson founded, told a Sustainability Project symposium in California in 1994 that William Jefferson Clinton is the 7th lineal descendant of Thomas Jefferson. He called upon Clinton to act in the spirit of his ancestor by drafting a Declaration of Independence, one that would include the biosphere, just as Jefferson authored a Declaration of Independence on behalf of humans. Clinton later appointed McDonough to his Commission on Sustainable Development. This explanation of the president's hidden heritage was confirmed by a Clinton cousin in 1994, who stated that she and the president were related to novelist John Grisham, and that both are descendants of Thomas Jefferson. Other theories about the president's lineage have been advanced over the years by muckraking journalists, who have implied that something sinister lies lurking in Clinton's genetic code. Two of the most spirited the Clinton years have seen are Sherman Skolnick and Ace Hayes. Skolnick, the Chicago area court activist and author of recent anti-Bush jeremiads, has alleged that President Clinton is not a Jefferson, as McDonough and others have purported, but, in fact, a Rockefeller, specifically the illegitimate son of Governor Winthrop Rockefeller of Arkansas, Clinton's political godfather. In this vein, Hayes, the late great editor of the Portland Free Press, speculated that Clinton is the illegitimate son of FDR's son, Elliot, which would make him, like his putative grandparents, Eleanor and Franklin, a Charlemagne descendant. After he was re-elected in 1996, Burke's Peerage, the British Aristocratic Heritage Society, in full, Burke's Genealogical and Heraldic History of the Peerage, Baronetage, and Knightage, whose pronouncements are deemed authoritative, stated that Bill Clinton, a descendant of Hugh Capet and Robert I of France, has more royal blood than any president in American history. Curiously, Burke's peerage also stated that the candidate with the most royal blood has won every presidential election since our republic was founded. Subsequent events would bear out the certainty that Clinton has royal blood and the raffish propensity to disseminate this royal blood willy-nilly in the libidinous manner of a debauched monarch. I'm speaking of the blood evidence in the Lewinsky case. In the sordid season of 1998, when the stain on Monica's blue dress was analyzed, the president's blood, to put it politely, was found to have genetic markers possessed by only 1 in every 5 trillion Caucasians. Holy blood, holy grail, Batman. Could this uncommon combination of chromosomes have been created by the kissin' cousins of hope? It seems doubtful. Talk to a mathematician. Rather, perhaps Bill pleasured Monica with a cigar, not merely to prove that he is a polite smoker, but also to preserve the divine substance of his royal essence. As he prepares to leave office and resume life as a mere mortal again and walk and talk among us, royals and commoners alike, and become president of DreamWorks and chase women humidor in hand, Clinton's true paternity remains a lot like George Frost Kennan found Russia to be, a mystery wrapped inside a riddle wrapped inside an enigma. What to make of this undistinguished president's distinguished lineage? Who is he? One line of research that hasn't been explored, but that might be, with telling results, I suspect, is the possibility that Bill Clinton is a direct descendant of Cecil Rhodes, the British oligarch who founded the Round Table and the Rhodes Scholars Program. If this were the case, active concealment of Clinton's ancestry might have been necessary to cloak the fact that he is a blood relative of one of the principal figures in the vanguard of the world government movement. At Georgetown, Clinton was a protege of Professor Carroll Quigley, who wrote the seminal history of the New World Order, Tragedy and Hope. As president, Clinton, a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, and the Bilderbergers, has proven himself to be a tireless toiler for transnationalism. He has supported every free trade measure that would help his friends, the corporations, and defended every move that would cause NATO and the UN peacekeepers to become the building blocks around which a world police force can be fashioned. We have to put Clinton's concealment of his heritage in its historical moment. Clinton came to power precisely at the time that President George Bush was being roundly castigated for uttering the phrase, "a new world order." With the anti-government movement rapidly degenerating into a militia movement, public revelation of the fact that Clinton is a descendant of arch-NWO conspirator Cecil Rhodes would have been more than merely controversial. It would have put his presidency, and perhaps even his physical security, in immediate danger. Hence the cover-up. 3 lines of research support the hypothesis that Bill Clinton is in some way related to Rhodes. Admittedly, they are tenuous leads at best, but I think that they merit diligent investigation by those with the time and the inclination to unwrap the riddle, the mystery, and the enigma that is Billy Blythe. First, Bill Clinton was a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford, but left without taking his degree, which is hard to do. You have to really screw up at Oxbridge to be sent down. He seems to have taken his Oxford degree for granted. By comparison, his classmates, Robert Reich and Strobe Talbot, behaved as if they would be expected to actually earn their degrees. Did Clinton truly fail academically, or was there resentment among faculty members that he had been selected for this meritocratic program merely because he was a descendant of its founder and patron, Cecil Rhodes? Second, check any British heritage site on the World Wide Web, and you will find that Clinton, the president's adoptive surname, is an Oxfordshire family name. This odd fact again implicates Clinton, said to be an ordinary boy from Hope, with the town of Oxford, that shadowland of arch-Kabbalist Cecil Rhodes, long before he even became a Rhodes Scholar. Third and finally, we have the documentary evidence. These include photographs of Bill Clinton and Cecil Rhodes taken in their maturity. Phenotypes tend to change, sometimes dramatically over the course of many generations, but over the course of only several ones, it is quite common for a striking physical resemblance to be passed down between a father and son, a grandfather and a grandson.